Dr. Jeremy Weiss here with Rise 25. I have Jerry Nylands, and she is the founder of Trade Press Services. And Jerry, what you do essentially is you help companies stand out in the marketplace with the right message, the right medium. And I want to talk about content marketing. And you teach people and talk to people and actually help execute on content marketing for companies. But one of the specific topics is how to build a solid content marketing program. And we were just chatting before we hit record about content marketing is misunderstood. So tell people what you mean by that.
Well, I think it is misunderstood because when people hear the term content marketing, they think of the phrase content is king. Okay, well, maybe it is. But
I thought cash is king. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes. Content marketing is not just about tactics. It's not just about producing messaging. There's a whole other realm in order to make content marketing effective. And those areas include looking at frequency of contact with your target audiences, secondly, messaging, and third, the platforms that your target audiences access.
So what do you mean by messaging?
Well, messaging is what do you want to say to your target audiences that will engage them? How do you solve their problems? What makes you different from other service providers? How do you build the relationship? So the messaging that you have is really not about how great your product or service is, but it's what will it do for the customer? How will it make them a hero in their organization? So that's the messaging component. Before we ever get to messaging, though, I think we have to take a look at frequency of contact.
Yeah, so talk about frequency.
So frequency of contact refers to the number of times you reach out to your target audiences. So companies, vary in their approaches, and you want to look at that and you say, do you reach out quarterly? Do you reach out monthly? Do you reach out weekly? Do you reach out daily? What's sufficient? And some of the factors that will determine your frequency is, of course, your budget, the size of your target audience, and finding the balance between what they want and not being a nuisance.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's no hard and fast rule because it just depends. Can you give me an example of a case where a weekly cadence makes sense, where it's perfect, but as far as you're not a nuisance, but it's what they're expecting or wanting?
Well, I think that weekly can sometimes be too much, and I would recommend semi-monthly. But if you are going weekly, make sure that it's not an email every week, but that it's other ways of reaching out to your target audiences, whether it's through press releases or social media coordination or a planned Zoom meeting or a webinar or a podcast or something like that, so that you vary the way you communicate when you're looking at frequency.
And then the next is platform.
Okay, so once you determine how often you want to communicate with your target audiences, and you've decided what the messaging is that's going to resonate with your target audiences, then you want to look at platforms. Where do they reside? What do they tap into? And it will vary from industry to industry. It may vary by the ages of the prospects and customers that you're seeking. So it can include bylined articles in magazines read by prospects and customers. It can include email outreach. It can include text outreach. It can include all kinds of social media, podcasts, webinars. It can include trade shows or other types of meetings that you might host or special events. So you want to look at all of the different platforms that are available and create a matrix of some kind so that things don't fall through the cracks.
Yeah. And Jerry, when people are doing content marketing, most people default to tactics.
Right.
And, I know when you think about content marketing programs, you start with the strategy and the planning. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what people should do to start actually the planning process.
Okay, so once you've taken the strategic approach of looking at frequency, messaging, and marketing channels, the planning begins. So you want to determine who should be on the planning team, how often you should meet, what your structure is, what you expect the outcome is for every meeting that you hold. And those are some of the ways that you begin the planning process. When you put together a plan, an initial plan, make sure it includes budget, make sure it includes assignment of responsibilities, make sure it includes a schedule and some kind of monitoring system so that you can evaluate whether it's on a monthly or quarterly or semi-annual basis.
Yeah. And when you're talking about the planning process, you have these specific steps that you walk people through. And the first one you talk about is establish your vision and mission. The second one is setting goals. What would be example of maybe in the planning process, what goals would someone have that you've kind of helped them map out?
Well, some goals might be to increase business from current customers by 5%. Or you might want to bring on 2 new customers per month, depending on the type of business and the size of the business. You want to quantify it in some way. You might set a revenue goal. You might set a goal for the number of engagements. So those are the types of quantifiable goals that you would set. You might even have a goal to introduce a new product as part of your content marketing plan.
Yeah. And then the third is pinpoint strategies. And you talk about how a lot of organizations fall down or make big mistakes with this, which I can see why, because one of the things you tell people is define and get to know your target audience. And I feel like people go too broad on this, Jerry. They go, well, I serve businesses, small businesses. Well, that's pretty broad. Can you talk about how you help people kind of just zone in on a specific target audience that are maybe too broad?
Well, I think we're guilty of that ourselves in our own business because the truth of the matter is our writing and media outreach and general marketing support services can help any B2B company.
Yeah, that's what's tough
But,
about it. Exactly.
but when you really focus in on where you've been successful and then try and duplicate those efforts, it makes getting a handle on the type of clients you want easier. So for example, if you've done some work with architectural firms, or let's broaden that to professional services firms. So architects, engineers, consultants, trainers, speakers, lawyers, CPAs, those are the types of companies that fall within professional services. You might say, well, I want to reach out to the industries that are growth industries. That could be a strategy. And so you research the marketplace, take a look at government statistics, and see what industries are expected to grow. So reviewing, once again, look where you've been successful in the past, look at expected growth industries, or pick an industry where you have an interest in, and then go deep. Join their professional trade association, write articles for their magazine, engage them in focus groups. So there are all kinds of strategies to help with pinpointing your target audiences.
I think you said something really, really powerful is if anyone asks the question themselves, where have we been the most successful?
Mhm.
That is key because you've already helped this audience and you've already gotten results for this audience. So I think it's an easier way of thinking about this question, because when you ask someone that question, who should I target? How do I narrow? It becomes this beast that you sometimes don't realize how to pinpoint it.
Right.
Yeah. So I love that. Think of where you've been the most successful. And you talk about a number of things. I encourage people, read the full article, because you talk about looking at the competition, defining your competitive advantage, assessing the quality and strength, choosing platforms. The next one is here's what people love, Jerry. People love identifying the tactics of where to put it, what to do. So talk about some of the content marketing tactics that people should think about.
The tactics are the nuts and bolts of a content marketing plan, and whether it's newsletters or emails or press releases or white papers or case studies, or books, blogs, any type of written communication, or like what we're doing, a video blog or a podcast, anything that communicates your content, your unique selling proposition, your value proposition. Those are the tactics you want to look at. And we produced a white paper a couple of years ago, and I think we listed like 50 different tactics. It's up on our website. Anybody can look at it, tradepressservices.com, and download it. And they can make a list or they can use that list and prioritize it. Get a group of people into a room and say, here are all the tactics we can use. I want you to rank the top 5 in terms of where you think will be most successful. And you'll be surprised how quickly you can get to consensus and see what people are thinking.
Yeah. I love about the tactical part is, listen, you don't have to choose one. It could be a multimedia approach. Like, this is a blog post. It's going to be on YouTube. It's a video, there's you could, kind of have one thing that goes across multiple platforms.
Oh, absolutely. And the last thing you want to do is what we used to call end-to-end marketing. And what that meant was, okay, somebody would try something and they'd do it for 3 months for whatever budget, and it failed. And so they would try something else for the next 3 months, and well, it worked a little bit, but not according to the expectations. So then they try something else for 3 months. And so 9 months later, maybe they found something that worked. But if you do your marketing activities in conjunction with each other, you can fine tune and test, and you don't lose that entire year by doing end-to-end marketing. You do it concurrently.
Yeah.
We say in marketing, test, test, test. Just like in real estate, they say location, location, location.
Totally. Test. So we talked about some of the identifying the tactics. So you do talk about creating a budget, which you mentioned, putting together a schedule and a matrix, and people could check out the full article because you actually have a nice graphic there of a recommended frequency with blogs, white papers. So I encourage people to check out, that particular table with best practices, what's recommended. And then you talked about assigning responsibilities. And then the last piece is develop and a monitoring, evaluation, and modification process. So talk a little bit about the monitoring part.
Well, I think that with marketing initiatives, you don't always have a method of evaluating success, because if you measure in terms of clicks or calls, it may not be accurate. Sometimes marketing programs take a while to build. And when a salesperson makes a call on a prospect or a customer, maybe it's because of after 3 or 4 outreach attempts, they recognize the company name and are more willing to engage with that salesperson. So you have to have some kind of metrics that you use, and there are a variety of tools out there. But I think that every company is unique and has to find a system that works for them.
Yeah. Jerry, I want to encourage everyone to go to tradepressservices.com and specifically go, if you're not on the page itself right now, looking at it, tradepressservices.com/content-marketing dash program, and actually see exactly what you're talking about. So Jerry, thank you for having me.
Thank you for inviting me to participate. It's always a pleasure.